Hello, OT friends, and welcome to the Uncommon OT series. I'm Patricia Modis, and I'm your host, a Filipino-American, native New Yorker, currently based in Los Angeles, bulldog mama, and an uncommon occupational therapist myself for the past 22 years. On this podcast, you will hear me proudly feature the unique careers of occupational therapy practitioners working in non-traditional and role-emerging practice areas, settings where OT is uncommon. I invite you to receive a dose of OT inspiration, to learn, to think outside of the box, and to be energized and motivated to follow in these unconventional paths. Happy listening! Before we begin this episode, I want to extend a special thanks to Picmonic, our sponsor. If you are an OT or OTA student looking for an excellent learning resource and study aid, Picmonic might be for you. Whether you're studying for your classes or getting ready for the NBCOT exam, it is a visual mnemonic learning tool that has been research proven to increase retention and help students ace their exams. It uses audio-visual learning and intelligence-based repetition algorithms to help with long-term retention while studying. If you're interested in trying it for yourself, sign up today using the link in the show notes or using the code TRANSITIONSOT to score a discount of 20% off your Picmonic membership. Welcome back, OT friends. I'm super excited to introduce you to our guest of honor, my fellow Filipino, Francisco Lasta. Welcome to the podcast, Francisco.
Patricia, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so glad that you're inviting me in this platform. I'm really, really excited about what we're going to be talking about in a few.
I am equally excited to have you on the podcast. Thank you for spending your time with us. And I'm particularly excited about learning more about your work in inclusive design. Mm-hmm. I know that you're an occupational therapist in background. However, you hold this non-traditional roles. Tell us a little bit about yourself and some of your favorite occupations.
All right. So I am, as what Patricia mentioned, I am also a Filipino American. I came here to the United States in 2007, and I've been practicing in quite a few settings, from pediatrics all the way to geriatrics and community health settings. And I am really passionate about the role of environment and the role of design in our day-to-day experience. And when there was an opportunity for me to really practice OT at the same time, get to be involved in design of the environment, I jumped at the opportunity right away because I just love that kind of work. And that's how my path led to Muller 2 or M2, which is an architecture firm that specializes in designing public spaces. And so talking about my favorite occupations, I like gardening. I like reading. I mainly listen to audiobooks, so I like listening, I guess. I love any kind of creative work. But recently I've been very much involved in doing improv in Second City, and I really, really enjoy it.
Oh, off the record, you and I shared a little bit about that, and I want to get our listeners excited that we're going to do a separate episode just on that alone.
Yes, I would love to.
That sounds so much fun. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much for sharing, a little bit about yourself and about a little bit about the work that you do. Do you have a background in design or architecture?
I do not have a background in design or architecture. I'm just very interested in it, that I'm learning about it out of passion. Like I read architecture books. When I travel, I really go to museums. I love well-designed things. And I think part of the reasons why it's kind of easier for me to get into the architecture industry is that when I was still practicing in the clinical setting, I was already into designing virtual environments and I'm very comfortable with the 3D software. I
Ah,
At one point when I was still in the home health setting, I was designing augmented reality experiences for my patients, and they really enjoyed it. And just using the phone and being able to do apple picking in their like living room, and it's
uh-huh.
it's it's just it's just so much fun designing something that is not the usual, but then also very beneficial to the patients that I've worked with. So that was really a great experience for me that somehow prepared me to be comfortable with my current role now.
Got it. That's so good to know. Um, I love that, just your sort of love and passion for design kind of led you, and I guess in combination with occupational therapy, it just sort of birthed this other specialty for you. And yeah,
Yes.
it's super exciting.
Yeah. And add another layer of user experience, which is another area that I was also interested in when I was, getting into like the tech aspect of what we do. I think that really opened my mind that there are so many possibilities that we can do as OTs.
Yes. So that brings me to my next question, which is what motivated you to share with us your journey on this podcast?
What motivated me the most is I don't see a lot of OTs in this area of practice. And it's kind of sad because it again we could bring so much value to the table if we share our skills to other settings other than our traditional practice. There's so much more things to do when it comes to advocating what we can do as OTs, because there are so many people that still are not familiar what we actually do as a profession.
Mm-hmm.
So a big part of what I did when I started in a completely different field is that advocacy work, which is
Yeah.
like telling people like what does an OT do? What are the things that we can help other professionals do better in their work?
Yes. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast to share with us, because I think so many OT practitioners are going to learn from you today. And yeah, so maybe we can segue into having you describe for us your area of expertise, maybe your the work that you do, whom you
Mhm.
serve, and maybe some of the goals that you're helping these organizations or systems or individuals accomplish.
hmm So when I started working for M2, my entry is a marketing strategist, which is also again another area that I just like am interested. Like what would make people interested in something, So
Mm-hmm.
I also explored that area, and I have attended classes and boot camps just to like know. I mean, it was even before I joined the firm that I was already interested in like branding, and I just love the idea of like being able to design something that would capture people's attention in a
Yeah.
way. But then like right now, I am really more involved in really building up our inclusive design initiative with the help of our architects and our designers in the firm, because we really want our future projects to be usable by all people, because we design public spaces. It should be truly public. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that all people can enjoy the space, whether it's a park, it's a school, it's a public or is a transit station. It should be easier to access so that more and more people can benefit from it. So how do we do that? We build this inclusive design guidelines, of course, with my input as an OT and also the input of architects to make it really comprehensive, but then at the same time, our architect would also be able to understand how it works. And having this partnership with, right now, we're partnering with Midwestern University, and I have an inclusive design intern who is doing her OTD capstone with us, which is really, really exciting. She is our first OT inclusive design intern in the firm, and I think that we are just gonna, make this a little bit more advanced when it comes to thinking about inclusivity in public spaces. So that is really, something that that keeps me busy, but then I'm so energized when I do it. And I love collaborating with our architects, and it's so much fun to work with creative people. So
Oh, I love the passion in your voice. It just sounds like this type of work is so fulfilling and just exciting for you. So
yes, yeah.
what an amazing fieldwork experience this must be for the student.
I
Um,
love working with the next generation of OTs, because even when I was still in the clinical setting, I was mentoring several OTs in their fieldwork too, mainly.
yes,
And now I thought that when I left the clinical setting, I won't have any kind of interaction with OT interns. Now I have an inclusive design intern who is doing her OTD capstone, and we're also building this partnership with um, other academic institutions with OTD programs such as UIC and Rush University. So that really is very, very exciting. And I know that together, if we collaborate, we can do important work that would really
yes,
impact our built environment.
yes, and also impact the profession of occupational therapy
Yes, yes.
in our
And
the direction that we're going, and
mhm.
the settings and spaces that we're expanding into.
Right, right. Because what we're doing now is we're 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 building up this OT program in a way that would make more OTD students or OT practitioners have
Hmm.
this kind of unique experience, right? Because I am not sure how many architecture firms actually provide this kind of experience with an OT in their organization. So that really
Yes,
is our main differentiator, because I have the experience of mentoring students. I'm very passionate about inclusive design and very passionate about our profession in general.
yes.
So I think that is really the strength of the organization when it comes to pursuing this inclusive design strategy that we're doing in our projects.
Yes, you have this again lens, right? This
Mhm.
perspective that lends itself very well to this role. So how exciting the student and this experience that they're having with you.
Yes.
So okay, I have a few questions in my head. I don't know where to begin. I'm thinking more about, you mentioned students. So okay, students, they have caseloads, right? That's what they look forward to. So
Mhm.
who are your who is your patient? Who are your patients there? Who are the folks that you serve?
So the folks that we serve is, of course, the bigger population, the
Yes.
users of the space that we design. So when you're in a clinical setting, you have this one patient, right, that you focus on. Here, we have a range of patients
Yes.
or clients. We call them clients,
Hmm.
or we call them, just the population that we serve. Whether, you're a child, you're an able-bodied person or a person with disability or an older adult. Um, we consider that the range of diversity that the population has, and make that inform our design so that we can make our design welcoming to all the different people who will be using it. And that's the purpose
Yes.
of public spaces, right?
Yes.
So having that ability to look at what the different needs are and how that translates to the design that we're creating.
Yes. So I'm sure that I will, amongst, a larger population, will benefit from one of these spaces that you've kind of helped design.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
I love that you're there, making sure that this all happens for the rest of, for the rest of the world, right? But who hires you to create such spaces? Do you work with the city, or do you work with
Mhm.
sort of private? I know these are public spaces, so I'm
Right.
guessing
Yeah.
that they're more city funded programs?
Yes, and federal funded programs. So how it usually goes is that we receive this request for request of qualifications. We call them RFQs or solicitations that, hey, there's this project that the city or the state is planning on doing. Would you be interested in submitting a proposal?
Got it.
So we
Okay.
respond to that. We create a proposal. And one of my key roles is to help create that proposal in a way that would really convince the client, which could either be, again, the city or the state or any other public client, that we are the perfect firm to design this project.
Yes.
And I think that really helped me become more familiar with how projects come to life, because I know I witnessed the birth of it, because I read the RFQs, I prepare the proposals, and then I later on find out that, you know, we get an email and then they would announce that, hey, you get shortlisted, or that means like you're one of the candidates that we're looking at, and our team gets interviewed. And I'm also a part of the of preparing for the interview process. So I sit with a team, and then I listen how the architects and designers do their presentation, and I provide feedback to them. And then once we get the project, I get involved to try to see what features might we be able to look at to add more inclusivity to the design aspect of it.
Amazing. I hear a lot of OT skills in there that
I
are
use a lot of OT
really,
skills.
yeah. Can you highlight a couple that you think
Oh,
really stand
yes.
out?
Yeah. Our ability, first of all, like in the workplace in general, that is, like, again, non-traditional, right? If you're able to empathize and really effectively communicate with your coworkers, that's really a strong skill. Because anywhere you go, that is an important soft
Huge.
skills to have, right? Um, and into like going into the details is our ability to analyze, okay, what what would make this more efficient? Or why is this not working? Where is the problem? Going back to like our ability to think in systems, or being systems thinker, we know what aspects are at play and how they are related, and where we can, address certain aspects that might help other aspects of that particular issue or problem. So I use a lot of those skills on a daily basis that I don't even know that I'm consciously using it. It's just like our nature as OTs to do that.
Yes. No, I heard a lot of communication in there too, just even in
Yes.
preparing for the presentations. I'm sure the aesthetics of all of that and
Aesthetics.
making
And
sure
and
that
that's
it's
one of the things that I've really learned, like, a lot. I learned a lot about design and aesthetics. I was already passionate about it, but it really advanced my skills in that area in a way, which of course I would need if I work in a design firm, right?
yes. Oh, fantastic. So, okay, thank you for all of those examples. Let's take a step back and yeah, I we talked about OT school and having your experiences, and then we kind of fast forwarded to working for an architectural firm. So,
Mhm.
can we fill in that little gap, basically answering for some of our listeners, perhaps how
Mhm.
you transitioned or how did you take that step or make that step from practicing clinician in a
Mhm.
typical, more traditional setting to then kind of embarking into, yeah, how
Right.
were you
So
able to
like the
locate or find
transition.
this job?
Mhm. So we know that we have opportunities to get aging in place certifications, right? So I enrolled in classes for that. I got my certification, and again, being passionate about design and environment, that really helped me. Like, I just want to do it, but I don't see anybody doing it. Like, what am I supposed to do? So I in my earlier kind of like exploration of this area of practice, I actually applied in architecture firms, but it didn't happen because they probably like, why you're an OT. What can you what can you offer us? So
They put
there's
this
not a whole lot of
application on the wrong pile.
yes. It's like why are you applying? And that's the reason why we really need to do a better job advocating for our profession when it comes to um, its applicability in other fields, because we can be really good partners. And I think OT and architecture, it's a perfect marriage when you want to do inclusive design.
Yes.
And when you think about it, the person who coined occupational therapy is actually an architect.
Oh, really?
Yes. So it's like almost like a full circle moment in a way. But that is really it's also because the two professions have been not collaborating early on. Ideally, you want OTs and architects when they're still in their didactic training to be collaborating early on so that they will be familiar with each other and how
Yeah.
they can be mutually beneficial so that when they become, full-fledged OT practitioners and architects, they are aware of each other's skills and the value that they can contribute to each other to have
Yeah.
this extraordinary magic that is inclusive design.
Did your firm, how, I guess I'm not sure, if this is an okay question to ask, so answer
Yeah,
any way you'd like, but
I will.
how informed was your firm of inclusive design and how were they incorporating those practices before you came along?
So as architects, they already have a background in ADA, but most of the
Yes.
time it's usually just the minimum ADA standards that,
Yeah. Like,
as long as they have the standards, they will follow that and, you're compliant. I'm sure they have also tried going beyond that, but the level of knowledge is really like pretty basic as far as like ADA. And of course, the 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 design aspect of it, they're trained to think like what makes good design, right? But our specialty as OTs is beyond accessibility, even beyond universal design. And that's one of the things that I really have to explain, that there is a distinction between accessibility, universal design, and inclusive design, right? A lot of times when people think of accessibility, is like there's the dichotomy of like mainstream design on one side and there's accessibility on one side. And
mhm.
that is really kind of what probably is the reason why you see accessible entrance like on the other side instead of like being the same as where the other people should go into the building. A lot of
Yes.
times when you go to it, especially if it's in an older building, that's even more challenging, where
Yeah.
the ramp is like right at the back, which makes it difficult for a person, let's say, a person with a wheelchair, like
Hmm.
he or she is already there, but then he still has to go around because the ramp is behind the building,
Yes.
right? So, and then universal design, that might be like a much better approach, but still, you need to be able to actually understand what the actual users of the space need
Hmm.
so that you can cater to those needs. It's not
Yes.
like it. I mean, it's definitely like accessibility is the floor. It should be basic, right? But then going beyond that is even better. So
Hmm.
practicing integrating universal design principles, but even going beyond that, which is inclusive design,
Yes.
and incorporating those aspects of like the social aspect, like designing for women, designing for the older adults, designing for the LGBTQ plus population, like
Yes.
integrating those elements would even be so much better. Our spaces would be so much better. We have those things in mind when we design our spaces.
Yes. Thank you for making the distinction, and kind of looking at them as levels, right? And sort of in a tier. And yes, I love the inclusivity of the inclusive design choice, right? That
Right. Yeah.
it includes the feel, the aesthetics, right? Which
Aesthetics.
will
Yeah.
want us to engage with that environment, or which might make us want to or not want to engage with that
Yeah,
environment.
yeah. Inclusive design should be welcoming. That should
Yes.
be, all people should feel welcome in this space because they know that they can use it without difficulty. They feel that they belong to the space. And it's not just about the physical environment. It includes the services that goes with it, the technologies that's being used, the way things are being communicated, signage, what are the available services in that environment that would make a person or the user of that environment feel comfortable and they feel like that sense of belongingness when they're in that space.
Yes. So, of course, now that you say all of this, right? And of course, I also had my prior knowledge of accessibility and universal design. Um, why has it taken so long for occupational therapists to embark upon this? Because now that you're saying all of this to me, I kind of feel like, oh, of course, like
Of
it's
course,
a
right?
natural
Yeah,
match,
yeah,
but
yes.
why haven't we taken the
Mhm.
steps?
So again, I was explaining like they're kind of operating in silos. Like there's OT here, there's architecture here. You know, they have a common goal of making the space better. But since they're not familiar with each other, they don't have the same language. So that already affects the communication. And
Yes.
like, I don't know how many architects are actually familiar with what OTs do, or I don't know how many professionals are familiar with what OTs do, right?
Yeah.
And that's why collaborating early on is really, really important. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do is to reach out to architecture schools. If there are, if one school has OT and an architecture program, they should start collaborating, practice that
Yes.
interprofessional collaboration early on so that later in their career, they're like, yes, we know that if we work together, we can do things better.
Yes. Well, I love that you're setting the tone and setting an example, because now folks can refer to your work, sort of
Yes.
say, well,
Yes.
look what's going on over there, right?
Hmm.
That's great advice,
That's why
collaborating early on. Mhm.
yeah, yeah. And that's one of the things that I'm really excited to talk about this coming AOTA conference in Orlando this coming March, because I will be hosting a discussion, a conversation that matters, discussion
Yes.
about the intersection of OT and architecture and how that, how the collaboration of the two disciplines can create more inclusive spaces. So I'm really excited to do that this coming
Uh,
AOTA conference. So
I
ah,
love that venue in particular, because it's a bit informal. It's you sort of
mhm.
out there in the big room, um, or out by the expo area. So yeah, there's something informal about the conversation, but it becomes, at least the ones that I've been a part of, they become really just stimulating conversations, and it gets you thinking and
Yes,
energized. So I'm
yes.
excited
You
for you
really
to
get to
have that
interact
space.
with, yeah, yeah. You really get to interact with everybody. You know, if if especially if the conversation gets really really lively, it's really it's a fun venue rather than, I mean, of course presentations are important, but I think I prefer interacting with people, especially now that I'm in improv. That really
Improv. It'll just be another gig for you.
yeah.
Just joking. Okay, so wow. Do you remember that TV show? It was a home improvement show where they helped folks who may have had disabilities or
Mhm,
accessibility issues sort of renovate their homes.
mhm.
And I can't remember the name of the show, but gosh, I remember watching that and just thinking, I hope that they feature an occupational therapist one day as being part of this team, or as a contributor at least, because that seemed exactly like what they were doing, right? Or
Yep,
what we
yep.
would be doing if we were to help modify someone's space, but just in a more lux kind of way.
Right. Yeah. 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 And that's also one of the things that, you know, we need to change, because a lot of times when people think of accessibility, they think of like the aesthetics is like institutional or cold and
Yes.
purely utilitarian. But it
Yeah.
doesn't have, like, we have advanced as a society. We have a better understanding of how of what our needs are.
Yes.
Our needs now are just, it's just like more than the basic stuff, right? We like beautiful things.
Yeah.
It makes us feel like life is worth living if we're surrounded with, with a pleasant environment, and that
Yes.
contributes to our well-being. And as OTs, that's our ultimate goal, is to, you know, have people, make people experience that sense of well-being while they're alive.
And be able to utilize their spaces in the way that they wish to.
Yes, they can express themselves, and they don't feel like they're different from anybody. And that's like one of the key features of an inclusive design, design space, is not having that, like, oh, this is really for a person with disability because it looks like this. It doesn't
Yes.
have to be that now. Our technology has advanced to produce all these different types of beautiful materials.
Yes. And for whatever material suits you, right? It suits your needs.
Yes. Yeah. It can be
So
customized.
how did you how did you convince how did you get the buy-in of the firm, the architectural firm? Because you talked about how it was challenging, you tried a
Mhm.
few places that didn't quite work out, and
Mhm.
then here you
Right.
are.
Yeah. Just constantly talking about the value uh, that OT can bring in the organization, like being persistent and really like working hard on adjusting the way you're communicating, and have that self-reflection, like, okay, was this message being received? And if not, how can I modify it the next time I communicate? And again, it's an OT skill. Like
Yes.
when you're interacting with a patient, you always have that um, constant adjustment on how you approach a client.
Hmm.
And I consistently apply that in my day-to-day communication, because the most important thing for an idea to come to life is for that message to get across. Because it's like, you want to go from this place, from point A to point B, but if you do not have an effective mode of transporting yourself from this point to that point, then you would not be able to go anywhere, right?
Hmm.
So being cognizant of the way you're communicating, the value of OT, and be consistent, persistent with it, I think that really helps. And really showing things that, hey, this is what we can do, and this is what's happening. So that's why it's working.
Oh, I love it. Now, this is actually what sets your firm apart from all the other firms out there.
I believe so.
Yeah.
And I'm really, again, I'm really, really excited that there is more and more awareness that of the importance of inclusive design, because I believe that inclusive design is not just going to be a trend right now. It's like sustainability. Before it was like, something that's still emerging, but now it's a
Hmm.
standard. And I
Yes.
think inclusive design is going to be the same way, where it's like cool to do now, but in the future, this is just going to be the standard, because people would
Yes.
demand, something like this.
Oh, well, I love that you're here to tell us more about the day to day. Can we share with our listeners a little bit about what
Yeah.
a typical day might be like for you
Yeah.
in this
So
role?
just like everybody else, it could vary, but I think I can describe what are the sets of activities that I do. Of course,
Okay.
check emails and all of those things. I work on proposals. I read whatever request for qualifications that we get, so that we can
Okay.
examine it, and we discuss it with the business development team and in the marketing team, which includes myself as well, if it's worth pursuing, and if we are pursuing it, how can we which firms can we ask to join us as sub consultants for this project, right?
Got
So
it.
that is pretty much like a regular discussion, a regular weekly meeting with business development, as well as with the marketing team. And right now, I'm also uh, allocating time to supervise our inclusive design intern. Her name is Clarissa, and really making sure that she's getting the most out of her OTD capstone experience in our firm, and being able to accomplish those goals that we have set at the beginning of her capstone experience, and working with their mentors from Midwestern. So that's kind of like a regular part of my routine in my current role. So it's like marketing, business development, and also taking care of it, like the inclusive design part of it, and all those others, like making sure that if we win projects, that we celebrate it with our sub consultants. I could organize an open house. I organized our open house party in Dallas. I think that was last year or a couple of years ago. It's just one of the things that I get to do, which is also fun because I get to travel, I get to organize parties. I love those things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and being able to attend conferences and being able to engage with thought leaders, especially in the inclusive design area, that's so much fun to do. Yeah, it's an exciting ride so far.
Oh, well, I hope that when you go to the conference this year, that'll help you connect, right? And kind of enlarge your network because yeah, now that, I don't know how many folks in inclusive design have presented in previous conferences before. But I know that that's personally something that I would want to attend and want to really kind of listen to in terms of, what can we do? How can we utilize our current skill set? How do we sort of pivot into something like
Yes.
that? Right.
Yes.
So excellent. So thanks for describing a typical day. Anything else you'd like to add?
I think that's it. I work hybrid, so I go to the office 3 times a week from Tuesday to Thursday, and then Mondays, Fridays I get to work from home, which is, it's really a great perk. That level of flexibility is really, you can't put a price on it, having that ability to work from home, especially when you have, when your schedule can be flexed and you get to do some things at a certain time of the day and still be able to work at night when you have to.
Another beautiful perk of being a non-traditional OT or working in a not such a clinical setting, right?
Right.
I think a lot of our listeners would be excited about that too.
Yes. I hope more and more OTs can be inspired by this conversation.
Can you share with us some recent highs or successes and maybe some recent challenges that you've had in your current role?
So recent highs is, of course, being able to partner with the OT schools here in Chicago, and I'm really glad that they're interested in partnering with our organization, and planning on like the OT students that they could possibly send in the coming year, and also just being able to have that platform where I get to have like a bigger audience in like the AOTA conference, where I get to talk to other OTs about what I do and really share them my journey, as well as like what they can do if they want to follow the same path. That is really, I feel like I'm contributing something to our profession, and that's really very gratifying.
Absolutely. Yay to you for that.
So I really, it gives me happiness, really. Yeah. So those are like the highs that I'm experiencing right now. And who knows what other opportunities would come. I think I'm very positive that more and more good things will happen in the future.
I agree. I completely agree. Any recent challenges that you'd like to share, or are there any?
Recent challenges, it's again ongoing advocating, especially for those professionals who, again, are not very familiar with like what is inclusive design. How is that
Mhm.
different from accessibility? But again, we have to like really modify our messaging every now and then so that it can really reach across the audience that we want to reach. And that's why I've
Yes.
been quite active in social media like LinkedIn, just giving tips and some kind of article features that relates to inclusive design or accessibility, so that more and more people would be able to have that in their consciousness as they
Yes.
look at their social media. Like, at least if they see something that I post that would interest them, I think that is already, a good way of advocating for our profession, and also for, practicing inclusive design in any area of,
Yes.
any industry.
I love it. I love your posts. I don't know if you see me liking them, but I like every
Yeah,
single one
yeah.
of them.
Thank you.
I like them. I like them because you're bringing to the forefront connecting inclusive design with occupational therapy. Because here you are, an OT, posting all of these things about inclusive design. So to me, that was, I think, one of the that's how I you caught my eye, just in terms
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
your area of specialty.
Mhm.
And after we first connected, now we're connected on social media, and I'm mindlessly scrolling, and then I see these pops from you again, delivering the same message that we belong in this space. It's,
Belong in
it's
space. Yeah.
relevant for us to speak of anything regarding this space. In fact, you're making that space more inclusive.
Yeah, yeah, and that's another thing about inclusive design. It's not just about designing for, different
A
types of
physical
people,
space.
or
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's also about involving another professional in the space that has a different perspective of how to approach the project. In my case, how to approach the space. Like, I have like a more functional perspective of like how a space should serve the users, right? And I have like a different lens compared to the architects. Of course, their expertise is really, really important, but combining those two is much more powerful.
Yes. Well, I appreciate all of the advocacy that you're doing between attending the conference, between, doing this podcast episode. Hopefully it'll reach the ears and just the
Yeah.
minds of other OTs out there, and it'll pique their interest. On
Well,
that note, oh, go ahead.
but thank you for giving me this platform, because, through this way, we get to spread the word to a much bigger audience, right? So thank you. Thank
Hopefully
you. I
that's the
really
goal.
appreciate it.
Hopefully
Yeah.
that's the goal. Now, switching on to other areas that
Mhm.
might make another OT practitioner more interested, can we switch gears and talk about money matters, right?
Mhm.
Anything that you feel comfortable with sharing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, how do you get paid for your work?
Yeah.
I'm sure you don't go through insurance.
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
So
that's a
refresh
good thing
us.
about it.
Yes.
Yes, that's a good thing
Refresh
about it.
us and
I don't have to worry about those things. When I started, I was practicing in the community setting. I did home health. When I started, I was willing to get a pay cut, even if it was significant. But that's because this is really the type of work that I want to be able to do.
yeah.
But since I'm able to really like show the organization that, hey, I'm really bringing value to the organization, and now I really feel like I'm well compensated,
Right.
and that's all I can say.
Very nice.
I didn't have to worry about, like budget issues, or anything like that. I get to travel. I get to have my PTOs. Again, the flexibility, those things that you can't put a price tag on. That's really like still important, right?
Yes.
Um, and if you're well compensated, like, why not? And you love the work that you're doing, like, what kind of where can you find that combination, right?
Yes. I'm happy for you. It's a win-win situation. I want to
Yeah.
congratulate you in finding this role, but I also, want to congratulate you on your persistence, on your, really kind of seeing that end goal, right? And really kind of pushing forward and keeping going anyway, even though you had some barriers along the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. 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 And be prepared to not know anything. And it's okay to be a beginner. Like there still are so many things that you can learn. And that's how we advance, right? Like if you just use the same skills over and over and you're not learning, like what kind of quality of life is that? Like
Yeah.
you're just stuck. And
Yeah.
I always like the feeling of being able to advance, the change. And I think that's part of the reason going back why I like improv, because in improv, like you have to be prepared to be unprepared because anything could happen on the stage.
Yes. But that's, I hear a lot of OT there too, just in terms of communicating with our clients and the things that might come up, and how we don't necessarily need to know it all, right?
Exactly.
We
Yeah.
have to just trust that we do know it,
Yeah.
um, trust that whatever that might be that we're
Yeah.
faced with, we'll use our good OT judgment
Yeah.
and kind
Yeah.
of move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Clinical reasoning, like that, you get to use that in a different setting. It's just not clinical, in the literal
Yes.
sense of the word, but you get to have like reason. Okay, why is this happening?
Hmm.
And how can I change it? Or what is causing this? And how can we address that issue?
Yes.
Right? It's not just like black and white, going back to like the systems thinking. And also like I think one of our special skill really is being able to identify that ability, difficulty is or disability is a range. It's not black and white,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like a spectrum. Like you could have like
Hmm.
a permanent disability that would impact major life activities. But then, even if you don't have a disability, it could be a situational disability where you're carrying physical loads, or, when you're like sick during that day and you're just not feeling well, like it
Yeah.
still affects the way you function, right? It
Yes.
still affects how you do things. And we OTs can see that, like, oh, there's a difficulty. Where is the difficulty? And how
Yes.
can we address that? So it's not like wheelchair users and not wheelchair users. Like that's the typical way of
Yes.
seeing accessibility or disability and like non-disability. So
Yes. I speak about that often with my fieldwork students in terms of, seeing the clientele that we serve, as I currently practice in a homeless shelter. So it's an
mhm,
interim housing facility. And, you know, with the clients that we serve, not everybody is diagnosed with this label, right?
mhm,
This is what they have. So they go into this pile. It,
right,
some folks are, some folks are not, right?
mhm,
Our
yeah,
lens is really valuable in that setting because we're looking at how certain things are impacting certain
mhm,
things. And
yes,
that does not necessarily require a label, right? So I know
mhm,
that that's a tough thing for some students to kind of wrap their minds around because we've sort of been pigeonholed into this medical model where there needs to be a label before we can work with these individuals, where we're both kind of saying that we don't.
yes, yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
And we
Totally
can
agree.
still show our value, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So I think there's going to be many, many OT practitioners listening to this episode who are just going to be thrilled to hear that you're working in this non-traditional role. You're feeling very well compensated in your role and are just feeling so fulfilled in your job. And,
yeah,
that this transition can certainly happen for them too.
yeah, yeah. Come on, OT practitioners, join me, please. That's my call.
Oh, so that brings us to our next question. If they were interested in joining you, they're interested in jumping on the bandwagon, do you
Mhm.
have any career advice? And I know you've already sprinkled some here and there
Yeah,
throughout
yeah,
our
yeah.
conversation. Can you think of any other career advice for anyone who might be interested in following your path?
Right. So it's really important to have that interest in the environment aspect of what we do. I think that's really huge. Um, and being able to keep pushing yourself to advance, your whatever you're interested in. Like I'm not even talking like, the path that I'm in, but anything that you're passionate about, you should consider pursuing it because it's one way of fueling you because sometimes things could be really tough. And if you're not
Mm-hmm.
interested in the path that you're taking, it's going to be so easy to lose interest and just give up because you're
Yes,
just in it for maybe the financial compensation or the prestige that that position brings you. So you really have to be like you have to know what you're passionate about and pursue it. Now, when it comes to the role that I'm in, again important to have a passion for design. And I think a lot of OTs already have that passion. I think including you, Patricia.
yes,
Yeah. So
yeah,
it's already, like we already have that kind of DNA that
yes.
it's kind of easier to pursue this path and network with other professionals other than your fellow OTs. Network with
Mm-hmm.
architects. Attend conferences that are not necessarily for OTs. Attend design conferences. And
Yes,
that would be an opportunity for you to interact with other professionals and you get to tell them your value as an OT. And you're advocating when you're doing that, right? And while you're advocating, then there is going to be an increased awareness of what we can contribute. And if
yes.
they're already aware, then they would demand our services or our expertise. So that's one of my top advice right now.
Such great advice. Can you think of any common myths or misconceptions about your current role that you want to demystify today?
Oh, common myths that if you work in an architecture setting, all you do is accessibility. We could do so much more than that. We could do so much more than that. Accessibility is, following the ADA guidelines,
Mhm.
uh, but our skills as OTs are wider. We cast a wider net when it comes to making people's experience so much better by addressing, the power of the environment when it comes to influencing our well-being.
Of that. Gonna quote you on that. I think that just, yeah, that just spelled it out. And again, another succinct way, just the value and how we're really well suited for your role.
Yeah, yeah. Focus on the value of what we do, and then explain how do we do it. That's the magical part because it's very unique how we do it.
Yeah, it's not just about ADA and making sure that it's 3 feet long and
Yeah,
however
yeah,
many inches tall, right? It's
yeah.
all about also making it more appealing for the
More
person
appealing.
to
In
utilize.
Yeah, engaging the users
Yeah,
of the space is another major, major, major component of inclusive design. And we are experts when it comes to engaging our users because we are trained to engage with different types of patients, from
yes,
pediatrics to orthopedic to, in mental health settings. We can do so much
we can. I was talking with some interns the other day about sales, right? And how that's sort of this very not spoken about skill set that we have as occupational therapists, but I know I've been able to convince my clients to engage in certain activities
more. Mhm.
due to my, now more refined sales abilities.
Yeah, yeah, that's really important.
Oh, so thank you so much, Francisco, for sharing your wealth of information about your area of specialty. I'm sure our listeners will be interested in reaching out if they were if they wanted to do so, would it be
Yeah,
okay if
yeah,
they
yeah.
did?
Yeah, dear listeners, feel free to reach out. I'm in LinkedIn, Francisco Lasta, and yeah, feel free to reach out and have a conversation with me. And if I'm not, busy with meetings, I will always take time to talk to you. And in fact, I have actually talked to quite a few OTs who expressed their interest in this kind of field.
Oh, good. Through LinkedIn.
Yeah, yeah,
Ah, that's such a
and
great platform.
yeah,
So yes, another,
yeah,
tip for OT practitioners out there, LinkedIn is such a powerful tool. I've met many guests on LinkedIn and have been interested, think you for one, right, in the work that you're doing. And if I only had all the time to read all those amazing articles that you put out. So I don't think any of our listeners will regret, connecting with you on LinkedIn because you're a wealth of information there. And I hope if they were truly interested that they'll take the next step, which is to actually connect with you
yeah,
and see how, yeah, you can maybe
yeah,
collaborate, maybe meet
yeah.
up at the conference.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I, I've been posting a lot of like really good tips when it comes to designing with inclusivity. And if we're connected, it's gonna show in your feed and you will still learn from it, even if you don't get to talk to me at least, you know.
Yes.
So
Very much agree. So thank you again for your time, for sharing your journey with us. Can't wait to do chapter 2 on
yes.
improv.
I would gladly do that because, like Patricia, this conversation is so much fun. I really, really am having a fun time having this conversation with you, and I'm glad that I'm able to share my experience to our fellow OT practitioners who are listening to this podcast.
And that wraps up another inspiring episode of the Uncommon OT series. Connect with me at www.transitionsot.com. And don't forget to sign up to be part of the Transitions OT community. By doing so, you'll receive my latest compiled list of uncommon OT practice settings, the latest news on mentoring offerings, uncommon OT live events, non-traditional OT resources, and more. You may also follow me on my social media pages on Instagram and LinkedIn. And if you love this episode, head on over to Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, and Google Podcasts to follow, rate, and leave a review. I also ask you to consider pledging your support to my Passion Podcast project by being a patron on Patreon. It is very much appreciated. Sending big OT love. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.